sir.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. I'd like to call to order the Centerville Board of Education meeting for Monday, June 22nd, 2020. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernball,
Here.
Dr. Rohr,
Here.
Mr. Schroyer,
Here.
Megan Sparks,
Here.
Mr. Dahl.
Here. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready? I
Yep.
pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to
to
the
the
flag
flag
of the United
of the United States of America,
to the republic,
the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty,
justice.
justice for all.
Thank you, and be seated if you were standing. Okay, next item is the agenda. I'd like to have a motion to amend the agenda and then to approve it as amended. We're going to add an executive session to the end.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernball,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. All right, that's all we need to do, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is Board of Education report, legislative report, Mrs. Sparks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dahl. Governor DeWine signed House Bill 164 on Friday. This bill originated as a bill concerning religious expression in schools, but now includes things such as school funding and other educational issues. Laura will be discussing the financial aspect of this bill later in her report. OSBA created a 21-page document on Friday that outlines all of the bill, so I will touch on the most important parts that relate to our school district. Teacher and principal evaluations. This specifies a teacher who did not have a student growth measure as a part of an evaluation for the 2019-2020 school year must remain at the same point in the teacher's evaluation cycle and retain the same evaluation rating for the 2020-2021 school year as in the 2019-2020 school year. It also authorizes a school district to choose to complete a principal's performance evaluation for the 2019-2020 school year without using a student's growth measure as a part of the evaluation. Also, a student may qualify for high school diploma using final course grades in lieu of end of course exam scores. The third grade guarantee for the 2020-2020 school year only prohibits a school district or school from retaining in the third grade a student who does not attain a passing score on the fall administration of the third grade English Language Arts Achievement Assessment under specific conditions. Reading improvement plans. Exempts public schools from having to establish reading improvement plans for the 2020-2021 school year based on assessment results for the 2019-2020 school year. Services to special needs students. Permits non-classroom personnel providing professional services to students with disabilities to provide services electronically or via telehealth communication for the balance of the 2020 school year and the entirety of the 2020-2021 school year. Remote learning. Permits certain public schools that do not otherwise have been approved to use a blended learning model under continuing law for the 2020-2021 school year to adopt a plan to provide instruction using a remote learning model for the 2020-2021 school year. Grade band flexibility. Permits a school district to employ or reassign a licensed teacher to teach a subject area or grade level for which the teacher is not licensed for the 2020-2021 school year under specific conditions. Online bus driving training. Requires the department to develop an online training program to satisfy the classroom portions of the pre-service and annual in-service training for school bus driver certification for the 2020-2021 school year. I believe I read, though, the in-bus training has to remain the same. These are just a few highlights from the House Bill 164 that I want to share with the board. I think it's important to note that both Jim Butler and Peggy Lehner were co-sponsors of the bill, and that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Megan. You have the student board members.
The student board reps have nothing new to report this week.
Okay. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is hearing of the public. The Board of Education provides this as a convenient opportunity for public comment before any official action is taken. Since this meeting is being conducted virtually, the district has asked community members to submit comments in advance by 4 p.m. today to be read at this time. We have received at least 29 comments for tonight's meeting. Our board policy contains a limit of 30 minutes for hearing of the public. So Ms. Swan will be reading comments only up to 30 minutes. The board will listen to all who speak or have written comments, and will have those sent to us later if they're not read. But generally, will not engage in discussions or dialogue at this time. Matters requiring follow-up will be directed to the superintendent. Individual board members can be contacted for a set meeting appointment, or written correspondence can be emailed to the board office, and we have received a number of those. We appreciate and welcome all of the comments that we receive, and glad that the community members are participating. Ms. Swan, are you ready, prepared to read the comments?
Yes, I am. I'll start with, we received a couple related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The first one is from the group, the Village of Elks, and their steering committee, which is made up of Marcus Bailey, Shay Callahan, Faraha Henry Jones, Naima Quarles Burnley, Roberta Taylor, and Tara Williams, who are all Centerville, Washington Township residents. So they sent this information to us. As parents of students of Black, African American, or multiracial ethnicity, we have identified these concerns within the Centerville City School District. Few teachers of color, low academic expectations for students of color, racially insensitive and prejudicial comments or actions by teachers, staff, and students, lack of diversity in the curriculum, disparate discipline applied to students of color. Our organization would like to see the following changes: hire more teachers of color, monitor the differences in discipline applied to students of color, provide professional development and training on implicit bias awareness for teachers and staff, provide professional development and training on cultural sensitivity and responsiveness for teachers and staff, require all staff, teachers, and administrators to participate in anti-racist training, provide training on cultural sensitivity, responsiveness, and implicit bias for students, diversify the curriculum to include authors and subjects on people of color. We have 3 critical questions for today. What are the demographics of the teachers recently let go? Were issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, factored into those decisions? How does the board intend to manifest its commitment to DEI in the policies it adopts and implements? How will the board address the concerns we have enumerated in a meaningful way? Most importantly, we fully support the diversity, equity, and inclusion team's efforts and urge the board to adopt their diversity plan as a board mandate to enact policies that evidence commitment to DEI. The Village of Elks is a parent organization whose mission is to improve the education and experience of African American, Black, or multiracial students and their families in the Centerville School District. We want to make sure that our children get the best educational experience the Centerville City Schools have to offer, regardless of their racial, ethnic background, income level, gender, sexual orientation, or disability status. Please refer to the email we sent to each board member on Friday, June 19th for further detail on our rationale for this statement. The next comment is from Dr. G. Scott Jones, 382 Sentinel Oak Drive here in Centerville. Greetings, board members and Superintendent Henderson. As a parent and educator, I appreciate the recent visible intentional measures Centerville City Schools has begun implementing to build diversity, equity, and inclusion. These measures are so vitally important for permanent systemic change and improvement of educational outcomes for all students. When properly adopted and when hearts are open to them, they will lead to a truly inclusive district where all children are equally and equitably guided toward achieving wholeness and greatness. The reality is that hearts don't completely change in one professional development session or even over one summer vacation. These DEI practices will take considerable time to be fully manifested. We must have concrete rules and regulations in place for the 2020-21 academic year that are used as checks and balances to ensure that all students are treated equitably by employees and respectfully by peers. What policies and fail-safe measures are being implemented by the district, parallel to DEI strategies, to ensure that all students of color, especially those of African ancestry, are no longer treated unfairly by educators or peers? What is the district doing now to make sure that opportunities, achievements, expectations, and redirections are all disseminated equitably this coming academic year? How will you protect students of color from the racism and implicit bias of peers and educators that are brewing over this summer? The next comment is from Dr. Michelle and Chad Callahan, 10972 Shallow Creek Court in Washington Township. I am sharing this letter to the Board of Education from the perspective of an African-American mother of two wonderful African-American children who attend Centerville City Schools. While overall pleased with the rigorous and bountiful classwork and extracurricular activities in Centerville City Schools, there is still work to be done to make everyone feel included. Below is from the Village of Elks, our parent group for parents of Black children in Centerville. I've also included some personal information. We are facing a critical time in the community of Centerville, the county of Montgomery, the state of Ohio, and yes, our nation and our world. We have been faced with the COVID-19 pandemic over the past several months, but long before, perhaps at the foundation of our nation, we faced the pandemic disease of racism. Black and brown people have historically been marginalized, oppressed, and systematically discriminated against. As a result, many Black and brown people have disproportionately experienced police brutality, incarceration, redlining in housing, health disparities, and underfunded/unequal educational opportunities. We have seen the moral compass of our country swing back and forth. While we elected a multiracial president, we have also seen the rise of hate groups, hate crimes, and outward expressions of intolerance. We are at a crossroad where individuals of all races are coming together to say enough is enough. All lives do not matter until we can affirm by our words, our actions, our policies, and perhaps most importantly, our budgets, that Black and brown lives matter. We have had enough of platitudes and promises. Now is the time for policies, programs, and progress toward anti-racism. The Centerville School District must put its money where its mouth is. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be. If there is truly a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it must be demonstrated in the demographics of the teachers, staff, and administrators. We must move beyond the invitation to participate in the expectation that every employee of the Centerville School District will be involved in anti-racist training. We need staff, teachers, and administrators to be cognizant of the hostile racial climate that currently exists and to proactively create spaces for students to feel safe and valued. The school curriculum must reflect diverse voices in what is read and who is studied. And then she also shared the mission of the Village of the Elks, which I read a few minutes ago. And then she ended with, personally, I've dealt with a situation in which my daughter was told to not continue in her 6th grade honors math class. At the time she was told this, she had an A in the class. I called the teacher to get further clarification because I knew that she was wrong. The teacher berated me for 15 minutes over the phone for not knowing that my child needed to drop down to the regular math class. At first, she stated that my daughter was not working hard enough. This was an absolute lie. By the end of the conversation, my daughter was working too hard and didn't need the stress of the class. The teacher provided no evidence for either of these claims. Fortunately for my daughter, I didn't believe the teacher, and my daughter didn't drop the class. My daughter made 3 A's and a B+ in that class, and A's in the rest of her classes for the rest of the year. She is now entering 10th grade, thriving in honors courses, in which she has made almost all A's. She has an active extracurricular life and social life. I discussed this situation with my Caucasian friends who have children in similar classes, and this same teacher never has this been mentioned to them. I regret not discussing this with the middle school principal at the time. I will not make this mistake again, as I am now aware of the inherent biases that my children may continue to face. I will fight for my child like any other parent would do. We also received a couple of comments and questions related to returning to school in the fall. The first one is from Richard Confer, 10617 Chestnut Hill Lane in Washington Township. I have been raising my children and now my grandchildren since I was 20 years old. I am now 53, so 33 years. I've ran athletic leagues, coached, and been a licensed official for football and basketball. I now own and operate a behavioral health center, which also has a youth program. This current situation, and I will attempt to only focus on the children and stay out of politics, has overwhelmed our youth. There are no normals for the children, and based on my experiences in education, we cannot let this situation ruin our children's lives. They need normalcy and consistency, and our education system pre-COVID, along with extracurricular activities, gives them balance. Children need friends, teachers, coaches, and interactions. From what I've researched, I have seen no children deaths from COVID, and who really knows if the reported inflated data is true. I truly believe earlier in the year in Centerville schools, we went through a virus similar to this COVID, if not COVID, and we closed schools and cleaned. My youth services program is busy with children suffering many disorders due to this COVID-19 situation other than illness. The damage this COVID is causing mentally far outreaches the risk to us as humans and the children. In my home, the children did the work required by school, but really learned very little compared to in classroom. They deserve better with no social distancing and no masks. Masks do not give protection, and based on true research done before the politicians have changed opinions to meet the narrative, can cause more harm by wearing a mask. I agree with temperature checks and staying home if sick. I myself or my grandchildren will not wear a mask, and I have worked through the COVID with no issues. In closing, children need their normal lives back, and anything less will be wrong. I choose not to live in this media-driven fear. The next one is from Diana Conboy, 8868 Rooks Mill Lane in Centerville. Dear Centerville Board of Education, let me begin with a big thank you to you and to all of the Centerville Schools staff. You all have handled this COVID response in a way that makes me very proud to be from Centerville. I became aware today that you all are having a board meeting this evening to discuss finances and staffing. Tonight you are focusing on the staffing. However, I wanted to take this opportunity to also share an idea that I had regarding the 2020-21 school year. I am simply one mother with 5 children attending Centerville schools, PVS kindergarten, Klein 2nd and 4th grades, and Tower 7th and 8th grades. As a former business owner, I understand that you have an extraordinary task ahead of you to develop a plan that is executable, financially feasible, and one that meets the standards set forth by the Governor of Ohio and his team of experts in the healthcare field. I have every confidence that you all will consider and weigh each option and ultimately develop the best plan for our schools. That said, I wanted to share this idea with you just in case you had not considered this type of approach yet. When it comes to religion, we, the parents, are responsible and free to choose what we think is the best path for our children. When it comes to healthcare and vaccination, we, the parents, are responsible and free to choose what we think is the best path for our children. I think the aspect of the state's COVID response that has bothered me so far is the perceived lack of freedom for us as parents to choose what we think is the best path for our children. The government seems to be making choices for us, at least initially, as they determine what facilities can be open and what is not able to be open yet. I would very much like to get back to a culture where the parents can be responsible to make the right choices for their own family. Many of us have unique situations, which makes our choices and preferences very different. What if Centerville City Schools offers multiple alternatives for parents to choose what they feel will work best for their family and for their children? These choices could be made via an electronic survey during the summer and could potentially lighten the capacity load for the schools for each particular option. I will explain further later in my letter. Many of these choices are not new. For example, a parent can already choose to send a child on the bus or can choose to drive the child to and from school. Is it possible for a parent to choose whether or not they want their child to wear a mask? Our church is offering multiple services, one with masks required and one with masks optional. Our pool is also open and is mask optional. Perhaps classrooms can be set up similarly, some with masks required for parents who choose this option. Once you receive the results of the parent survey, perhaps you can plan schedules accordingly and match masked students with teachers who might be more at risk and match the unmasked students with teachers who are not as concerned with their potential exposure. Is it possible for a parent to choose whether they want their child to eat in the lunchroom and be able to sit and socialize with friends, or whether they prefer that their child eat in the classroom with appropriate social distances between students? If a significant percentage of parents choose the lunchroom, many of us are allowing our children to play and swim with others already. This could alleviate the capacity of classrooms needed for classroom-based lunch areas. Is it possible for a parent to choose whether or not they want their child to be free to play outside during recess? My children especially need this mental break in their day, as their ADHD would make it very difficult for them if they don't have this physical outlet to get rid of some energy. I am anticipating that this would ring true for other children as well. Is it possible for us to allow parents to choose whether or not they want their child to attend school in person or attend each class via Zoom for all or part of the school day? If there are no traditional lunch times or recess, we may appreciate the option to pick up our children at lunch and attend afternoon classes via Zoom. If you have fewer children on the bus, fewer children needing to eat in classrooms, and fewer children needing to stay inside for recess, then this could potentially have a positive impact by making it easier to socially distance the remaining children who need a higher level of protection as determined by their parents. Perhaps the downside is the management of offering multiple alternatives for families to choose and keeping track of which child needs to be where, especially for younger children. One idea for tracking who goes where, at least initially, could be color-coded rubber bracelets, and each kid can wear their 2 school day choices. Kids who play outside wear a yellow bracelet, and kids who don't wear a red bracelet. Kids who eat in the cafeteria wear a green bracelet, and kids who eat in classrooms wear a blue bracelet. This gives the monitors and teachers a quick way to ensure that the kids are in the right place during the school day. Buses and parent pickup would be the same as it's always been. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my suggestion. I am anticipating that there may be challenges of which I'm unaware. I have confidence that your ultimate decisions will be with our students' and families' best interests in mind while balancing financial and physical feasibility. Okay, the rest of the comments we received all had to do with staffing reductions. So I'm going to try to get through as many of those as I can. The first one is from Mike Pinot, 6165 Millbank Drive. In the meeting on June 15th, 2020, you stated that there were no programs cut. I believe you lied to us about that. My autistic son was in a 611 class. My son was part of the introductory class and has been using the 611 format to great success. He has been doing this since 3rd grade and is now 2 years from graduation. With the current budget cuts, you have cut this program. The district is also taking away the 611 program in one of the middle schools where you had 2 classes that had the 611 format. You fired one of the teachers, so now the remaining teacher will have to take on additional special needs students. What format are we going to use now? Please point me to a professional study that proves that this district's method of educating the special needs population is more effective than the 611 format. More importantly, I believe your statement goes to a greater issue of not being inclusive or having a goal of inclusiveness. The best example is your special needs program at Watts Middle School. The classes run opposite of typical kids' classes. For example, English is first period for the special needs program for 6th graders. The English for the typical kids, 6th graders, is last period. So if a special need kid were excelling in English, that student would not be able to move up to the typical class. Your goal should be to mainstream students wherever possible. With your method, you are keeping them in their box and not letting them grow. You have decided instead to hide these students and they can reach so far. Whether or not you want to deal with the special needs, your statement about these cuts shows the district's feelings on its special needs population as a whole. This district does not consider its special needs teaching methods are actually programs. My son is clearly not part of the junior class, so without the 611 format, at least he had a group that he belonged to. Where does he go for social interaction now? This was a tight group. This district does not promote or foster an environment for this segment of your population. Also, there has been 0 contact with our coordinator, and I'm not sure how legal this change can be without an IEP meeting. I believe that what was implied by not even addressing the cuts in special needs programs during your June 15th, 2020 meeting is that this district does not or does care about this. I'm sorry, let me start that sentence over. I believe that what was implied by not even addressing the cuts in special needs programs during your June 15th, 2020 meeting is that this district does care about this portion of your school, but instead this district seems more worried about purchasing Chromebooks. I understand the funding that the school district lost. However, my son did not lose funding. How do you explain cuts to the special needs program when that funding did not get cut from the state budget? You will receive that money from the state for each special needs student. That ranges from $10,000 to $25,000 per student, in addition to the approximate $11,000 that local taxpayers are paying per student. So this board needs to explain why any special needs programs have been cut, even though you don't believe that these are programs as you stated in the June 15th meeting. I would like you to account for the money that is being spent on my son. I estimate that he is bringing in approximately $36,000 to the school. Now, we do not know how much each of the other kids in his 611 class bring in, but using a conservative estimate, that would be around $180,000 for his class. We would also like to know how the $180,000 is not enough money to fund this class. Individually, my son brings an extra $25,000 into this school, and it appears you would like to funnel this money to what? Chromebooks. You have taken away his ideal teaching method, and we would like a full account of how you spend my son's $36,000 because he does not have a Chromebook. Or are you just going to hide him in a room and not deal with him as you have done in the past? A cynical person would say that the district is using this as a ploy to pull at the heartstrings of people to try to get another levy passed here in Centerville. We hope this is not the case and would be deeply disappointed if this is the way you are doing business. So what I need from this board is a full account of the use of the money you are getting for my son. I need a full explanation why the 611 teaching format does not work, and your way of teaching is what is needed for him. I also need an account of why this district chooses to hide the special needs and do not promote inclusiveness. I have plenty of accounts of my student and other students being left out, so a blanket statement will not be needed or accepted. If you are not going to answer these questions directly, please do not waste my time. Just move on, and we will keep hiding our kids from your perfect world. Feel free to contact me anytime. I look forward to your direct answers. I apologize. My screen is kind of going dark a little bit. So the next comment is from Sarah Morgan, 208 Brad Street Road in Centerville. Dear members of the school board, after passing a substantial school levy, cutting the teachers who got us through the worst global crisis in recent history feels like a betrayal. We are paying higher taxes to pay for my children's fabulous teachers. Cutting these teachers would be cutting our best asset, both for now and for the future. Engage Centerville's best strategists, leaders, and innovators to make a groundbreaking plan for recovery for our school district in the fall. Here is our chance to be pioneers in public education. We would like to keep our trust in our school leadership. The next one is from Curtis Mullins, 180 East Franklin Street. And he wrote, I would like clarification on why teachers are taking cuts and in some cases being fired when our city just passed a levy to increase taxes for additional school funding. I assume there are many other areas which can be cut, such as the pay of administrators and reducing the budgets of any sports-related activities. I believe that teachers are the most invaluable part of an education system, that the recent staffing changes may lower the morale or add stress of the current teaching staff, and that any highly qualified prospective teachers in the future will have a reason to choose another school district when deciding which community they would join. In my opinion, the high-level administrative staff should show leadership by being the first to take a pay cut, and we should also cut any programs which do not directly benefit the primary purpose of this school district, the desire to provide our children with the best education we can offer them. It is absolutely insane that the school system was making cuts to teacher salaries before the levy passed, and now we are actually firing teachers after it has passed. One can easily see through Ohio's government salary site the salary of each public employee working for the school district, and there is an obvious discrepancy between the money we need and where the cuts are coming from. It also escapes me how the school district can save money on months of overhead such as air conditioning, maintenance, and other costs, but still come so short on their budget. If the school district does not have the resources or motivation to transparently share the budget and rationale behind the recent cuts, I would be happy to aggregate this data and share it with other locals in our community, as well as all interested media outlets, to enlighten and educate others with additional context around the current situation. The next one is from John Pitts, 1241 Fernshire Drive. He wrote, I have a few questions regarding the proposed cuts to the Centerville School District to be addressed at the Board of Education meeting. First, could you provide a rough estimate of the annual revenue collected to be used by the Centerville City School District? Second, of this collected revenue, can you give a rough estimate of how much / what percentage is collected from residential real estate taxes? Third, the passage of the most recent Centerville City Schools levy was approximately a increase in what was being collected from Centerville residents. Where is this money going? My personal real estate taxes going to Centerville City School District went from $2,703 to $3,136 annually. This does not include the thousands spent for our daughter's school functions / fundraisers. The loss of state funding was quoted as 2.1 million. From my estimates, this is a small percentage of what the school district is provided. Why are teachers being selected as expendable instead of less critical resources? Thank you for your time and attention. The next one is from Shauna Davis, 5260 Vernadale Drive in Centerville. Dear Dr. Henderson and board members, I am writing to you today as a concerned parent of a child with special needs in your district. My son is a student at Magzig Learning Center. If you are not familiar with our program, it consists of students with a wide range of differing abilities and behaviors. It would be an understatement to say I'm very concerned and disappointed with the district cuts that are taking place right now, but specifically the cuts that are impacting special needs students. Our population is vulnerable and requires special consideration when making such changes. We recently learned that our learning center will be losing one of its teachers, Miss Susan Hott. Ms. Hott has been instrumental in helping form what the Learning Center is today, and by getting rid of her, you sacrifice the quality of the program, as well as jeopardize the safety of our children. I will list several of my top concerns, but there are many to consider beyond these. One concern is the quality of the Learning Center being at risk by only having one teacher. Not only did Ms. Hott help form the program that exists today, but she knows what it takes to run it efficiently and effectively for our children. Since hearing about the cuts, I have heard district officials mention that our programs are not being cut. That is not true. By cutting our teachers, you are cutting the programs. A program is just a program. What makes it work are the teachers and their students. You cannot expect to maintain the same quality of a program with half of the teaching staff. Safety of our children is another concern when they return next year. They will be returning after a 5-month break to potentially a very different environment, one with mass social distancing and excessive hand washing. To expect one teacher to handle the daily obligations of a special needs classroom with 12 plus students, in addition to keeping up with the current COVID mandates that will be set before them, is asking for a disastrous outcome. Lastly, there is more to consider than numbers. I am of the understanding that one of the district's criteria for making such cuts is based on the teacher to student ratios currently in the special needs classrooms. While on paper, I'm sure your decisions make sense. However, in the classroom, I can assure you they do not. It is a dangerous and slippery slope when you start to base your decisions strictly on numbers in a special needs classroom. There are so many things to consider in addition to those that I've already mentioned. One being the state's criteria for determining classroom sizes, which states the student level of need has to be taken into account when considering classroom numbers. I'm curious to know if that was a consideration before making your decision regarding Ms. Hott, seeing that the Learning Center has such diverse levels of needs. In closing, I am fully aware Governor DeWine has made recent budget cuts to all districts in Ohio, which makes this a challenging time for districts. I understand modifications will have to be made to reflect the budget changes, but knowing we recently had a levy pass in November, ran on the campaign to keep our educational standards high in Centerville, leads me and other parents to wonder if other options were considered before deciding to cut our teachers and programs. If so, what were those options? I have yet to hear them be communicated to parents. I wonder if such options as asking all staff, including the superintendent and administrators, to take a pay cut was considered, or taking a real hard look at extracurriculars and activities, such as middle school Spanish class, for instance, and determining if such classes are really essential or just a luxury. I am very disappointed in a district who prides themselves on academic excellence, but who would choose to put their teachers and programs at the front line to be cut, especially the staff and programs for the most vulnerable of your district. Our children and teachers deserve better. The next one is from Gina Hernandez, who is a teacher and a parent. Dear Centerville School Board, as a parent of two children who attend Centerville City Schools, one being a special needs son, I am voicing my deep concern for the proposed cuts in education, especially when it comes to cuts in special education. As you are probably aware, parents of special needs students throughout our district have been discussing how we can unite to ensure that our students' education does not suffer at the hand of the proposed cuts. More specifically, I'm concerned that Centerville follows the legal obligation it has to each student's IEP. By federal law, the school district must adhere to what is on an IEP. This covers number of students, specific disability to teacher ratio, least restrictive environment, documentation, medical and safety concerns, participation in clubs, etc. Without the assistance of seasoned paraprofessionals who are already stretched and make substandard income, and the threat of losing top-notch special education educators, Centerville City Schools will risk legal issues that arise from neglecting IEP agreements. Simply, our children cannot be involved in programs and activities if important supportive staff are not present. It's difficult for some of our students to be in their structured environments without supportive staff. A special education professional must have support staff or risks endangering the other students in the classroom. The question that you can answer here for me today is, will Centerville ask its medically fragile students or students who are at risk for running off to continue to work remotely due to the medical risk of contracting COVID-19? Our students with special needs may not be able to wear a mask or be vaccinated or understand they have to be distant from others. Will your nursing staff be cut? Will they be traveling around the district? The next one is from James and Ann Sloan, 450 Claridge Lane in Centerville. The news we received about the teacher cuts for the school district has left our family in shock. As grandparents of a very special second grade boy named Marley, that is the sunshine of our lives and many others, the news of proposed huge cuts to the special ed program has brought us to tears. You see, Marley has had a life that had him slated as just another throwaway child by his previous school system. Marley started kindergarten at PVS in September 2018. The IEP that Marley brought with him from his old school district had him painted as a child that was unteachable. We knew better as a family. We knew that our precious grandson was capable of so much more. We knew that he has brilliance, but we had to figure out how to unlock his mind so that he could reach his full potential. The special ed department of PVS soon realized after meeting Marley and working with him that there was way more to Marley than what meets the ordinary eye. With the loving, caring, and guiding hands for the last 2 years from the staff at PBS, Marley has progressed so much, it's unbelievable. He has made so many friends and learned so much. Please don't take this great program away from Marley and others like him. The next one is from Ann Muntank, 7571 Cloverbrook Park Drive in Centerville. Dear Mr. Henderson and distinguished board members, I have lived in Centerville for 40 years. During that time, I have never failed to vote in favor of a school levy. I've always trusted the Board of Education to use my tax dollars wisely. However, I am now writing to express my concern about the cuts to special education that Centerville is proposing. I find it unacceptable that half of the proposed position cuts are special education teachers. This is especially disturbing when the district has not mentioned cutting sports electives, optional high school programs, and so on. On top of this, the district is planning to purchase new Chromebooks with the CARES money it receives. If we are in such a financial state that we cannot afford the staff needed for the most vulnerable children, why are we spending over $400,000 on technology? I understand the district needs to make adjustments due to funding cuts. However, the neediest students should not be expected to carry the majority of the suffering. I'm imploring you to make sure that Centerville lives up to its own mission of meeting the needs of every student and its reputation for being the best available for students who receive special education. Let us reassess our priorities when deciding on these cuts and protect the neediest students. My grandson's education matters. This next one is from Denise Green, 9601 Burnett Isle Drive. Dr. Henderson and Centerville School Board, I'm writing to file a formal complaint on behalf of my daughter, Samantha R. Green. My daughter was diagnosed with autism at 1 year and 9 months, and I have been her voice and have been fighting for her rights ever since. My family moved to Washington Township from Milford, Michigan in 2007. We specifically and very purposefully chose the Centerville School District in Washington Township for our new home, primarily based upon the special needs program after diligently researching various options and alternatives. Now you have taken that choice away without so much as a courtesy call, much less providing any notice by cutting the program that my daughter has been a part of since the 3rd grade. To add injury to insult, this outrageous action was intended to be kept from us, but it was leaked and consequently shared with the parents, which would have otherwise left us completely in the dark until the start of the new school year in August. Samantha is 2 years from graduation, and you have cut the program that I myself thanked you for personally at the Centerville Noon Optimist Club meeting over the years. I'm extremely disappointed and beyond upset in the way that you have governed yourself with respect to this decision which affects the program that is critical to the needs and support of our special needs children, and never even plan to inform the families of this change with appropriate notice to consider expectably an alternative. I have asked the question, is this legal to cut the program that my daughter has been involved in without a formal IEP meeting? I have to question your ethics here as well as your reasoning behind cutting this program for our special needs children. My daughter brings an extra $25,000 into the district that I sign off on every year. I will not sign off for the same appropriation for my daughter's education without the program guaranteed and in place in the fall, nor will I support a school cut that I do not believe in. Additionally, I am formally requesting an accounting and audit of each annual $25,000 appropriation for my daughter that I signed off on previously, in addition to any further appropriations to be made in the event there are any. This program was designed especially for our children by your former special needs coordinator. This special needs coordinator sold the families on this program, and now you want to cut the program while continuing to expect our children's financial appropriations to contribute to the school's budget. The word special means something that is different from the usual. The special education class that was developed and designed for this group of special needs children does not teach in an ordinary way. In this program, everyone can learn equally to their ability. The learning process of these students takes much more time due to their physical and mental limitations. And now you want to take what tailored education away from our kids. We will stand united to support the program for our special needs children. For the children to receive an education, they need additional time and extra help to get them close to where their peers are. This program was designed by Centerville to create an individualized education plan for each child based on their needs, which provides the necessary assistance and helps to level the playing field to the child's non-disabled peers. Without this program, our children will get further and further behind. The school district lost funding, however, my daughter did not lose her funding. You would still receive monies from the state for each special needs student as long as each parent elects to keep our children in the school without the program in place. I will not support the cut of this program, nor will I keep my daughter in a school system that deliberately and acrimoniously removes her lifeline. You have taken away a teaching method that the parents support and believe in. Most importantly, one that was designed and developed by Laura Collier, a special needs educator that cared and supported our children. Where did that care and dedication go? Based upon numbers made public today, 9 out of 19 teachers cut were intervention specialists. That's 47%. How can this be justified when the special needs students are such a small population of the student body? Can someone please provide context behind this rationale? I have had to fight for my daughter's rights, protect her from other children that would laugh at her, parents that would point and stare because we were different, all because they were never educated about autism. Never in my life would I think I would have to fight a school district to keep a program that was created and designed for the special needs children by the Centerville school system and taken away. That's the $25,000 question that I can't answer. Why would you take away a program that would hinder or hurt the special needs children? I want answers. Why would you want to cut our children's education? Having a disability of any kind should never stop anybody from conquering the world, but the very system designed to facilitate every possible leverage for advancement has to remain in place for the accomplishments to be realized. I'm going to stand on the front line, fight for this program, and I'm going to let my voice be heard throughout the community. Our special needs children are heroes because they have overcome so many obstacles. Is it your intention to severely limit their future should they stay within Centerville schools?
Sarah, I think we've passed the 30-minute mark.
Okay.
You've been keeping track?
I think we're close.
Anyone, my notes indicate that you passed it. Anyone else agree or not agree?
It was 7:07 when we started.
So we've definitely passed it. So apologize to those people who communicated with us, community members, and did not have their comments read. Be assured that Dr. Henderson will receive all of those and will respond to anyone that comments or writes to us. I think, Dr. Henderson, we're ready to move forward on to the next item on the agenda, which is Superintendent Reports.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Like you indicated, I would like to make a report tonight to the board and to any of the community that are joining this virtual meeting. Like you said earlier, I would first of all like to thank all the community members who have reached out to us Today and even last week, we've talked with a lot of people, both in person on the phone and through email, and we've answered many questions. Throughout the rest of this week, myself and staff will be reaching out to those who shared comments tonight, those that we heard that were read by Mrs. Swan, and those that sent those, but we ran out of time. So we will make sure that we get answers to everyone's questions and make sure that we provide accurate information to everybody. So we will definitely get that done this week. So I did want to share some information though with the board and the community regarding 3 issues, and that is the staffing reductions. It is also about technology and also about coming back to school in August. And I'd like to start with the staffing reductions first. So I'd like to share with the community that each and every summer, our administrative team has always taken a very careful look at enrollments and staffing for the upcoming school year. We've worked hard to be fiscally responsible and make sure that we always make good decisions. And so in addition to looking at staffing projections and pupil-teacher ratios in all areas of our operation, we also always review the budget reductions that we seem to always get from the state of Ohio. We look at our funding projections for the future, and we look at the impact of all of this as we plan for the next school year and for the long-term financial health of the district. The levy that passed in November was the first time that we have asked our community for additional funding in 6 years, while in the past, we have passed many new school levies kind of on a 3 or 4 year cycle. So we worked hard to stretch that money for as long as possible. Since January, we have received a partial collection of the new tax dollars, but the unexpected cut from the state foundation funding and additional costs related to the coronavirus pandemic have indicated our attempts to get out of deficit spending. We're now looking at all areas of our operation, but the largest expense in any district is in the area of personnel. This makes up over 88% of our district's operating budget. As you know, we've been working through a process to reduce staffing where possible while maintaining reasonable class sizes and keeping all educational programs. It's always difficult to lose great staff. The last time we had extensive reductions was in 2012. Some of the many areas which were affected back then included things like foreign language, librarians, gifted services, some career education programs at Centerville High School, the Grant Nature program, and there were many other things that we looked at as far as making reductions in. So it's important that we always make sure that we make responsible decisions to make sure that we are appropriately staffed, not under or overstaffed, as we look ahead to the next school year and beyond. The 31.5 teaching and administrative positions that were affected include 13 that were reduced through attrition, which is retirements and resignations, and 18.5 reductions in force. These 31.5 reductions come from all grade levels and from a variety of different disciplines. I know we've had a lot of questions in regards to the cuts to special education. Please know that we plan to meet the needs of all of our students in our special education programs and support them like we always have. We're still reviewing the classified, which is the support staff positions, and also supplemental co-curricular contracts and all other aspects of our operations to determine additional ways that we can save additional money. And we'll continue to look at everything that we're asking the board to approve tonight, and also other areas of our operation throughout the summer. We want to make good fiscal decisions, but also good decisions that support our students and support our staff and make sure that we are doing things that are reasonable, but also that are fiscally responsible. And like I said, we'll continue to watch our enrollment throughout the summer to ensure that all of our programs are appropriately staffed for next school year. In regards to technology and the Chromebook purchase, tonight we are asking the board to approve the use of federal CARES or ESSER funds to purchase Chromebook laptop devices. The CARES funding or the ESSER funding was designed to provide relief to districts and help us respond to the demands of the current COVID-19 crisis. Educational technology purchases are on the intended use of this funding. By using the CARES and the ESSER funding to purchase these devices, we can redistribute the $240,000 that has been allocated in the district's operating budget to replace devices as part of the larger district technology plan. Our long-term plan is to offset this expense and by replacing devices by using permanent improvement funding, which can be used to make improvements to property and assets that last 5 years or more. This will continue to help the general fund moving forward. Purchasing an additional 1,500 devices this year will get us to a one-on-one ratio, which means that every student in the district will have an equitable access to remote learning opportunities. And just as another note, based on their learning needs, if some students need different types of devices than Chromebooks, our student services department and our technology department will work together to make sure that those students are supported with everything that they need. This spring, we were taken off guard by the extended closure of schools. Although our staff and community rose to the challenge, the district did spend weeks getting families and students the appropriate technology to access curriculum during the period of the crisis learning. Current information continues to reiterate that schools will need to create plans that allow for transitions between in-person, blended, and fully remote models for the school in the fall. Assigning each student a device that would stay with them at all times would mitigate the loss of instructional time during these transitions and improve our response in the changing environments. In addition, health guidelines also recommend that reducing the number of objects that are shared by students to cut down on the spread of disease is the way to go. Assigning a device to individual students helps address this health concern and cuts down on the amount of instructional time that would be spent on sanitizing shared computers. For several years now, the technology department, in support of curriculum and instruction, has been working to improve the student-computer ratios. We believe that equal student access to this technology is an important resource for teaching and learning today and in the future. This is a unique opportunity to position the district sustainable long-term for maintaining these resources. And again, this would be something that every single student in the district would benefit from and have an opportunity for this kind of support. In regards to returning to school, this has also been a very challenging situation that we are working through. And you know, there are always lots of decisions to be made as we look forward to a new school year. The planning for the 2020-2021 school year has really been pretty unique, and there are still many unknowns. Our plan right now is to get students back into our school buildings in person as often as possible. We also know, and we anticipate, that there will be some families who do not want their children to reach the school. So I'm going to work with my staff and with the Board of Education. We hope to provide another option that would provide them an opportunity, those students, to do a fully remote learning option if parents do not want their children to come back. Our decisions about reopening school buildings will be dependent upon the guidelines and requirements we receive from state and local health departments. Some of those guidelines could deal with some of the issue covering our school bus and sanitizing. Once we have the guidelines, which we hope that maybe we'll have some guidelines by tomorrow from the governor and maybe other guidelines from public health later in the week, we will have a better idea of what in-person or remote learning options will look like. So we will be able to reach out to our families and have them choose the learning option that works best for their family. We did start our Elks Back to School email update, so we'll continue to keep our families in the know, and we'll want to reach out to them as soon as we have the guidelines established to make sure that we do what we can to support every single family in Centerville and the Centerville City School District. So that ends my report tonight, Mr. Dahl. I appreciate the time to share those thoughts.
Dr. Henderson, before we get off superintendent report, there's been some information in the news. I know you reported to us about the football player that was diagnosed with COVID-19. Could you perhaps comment on that? And I know Dr. Rohr wants to also comment. So you could lead that discussion for us.
Sure, I'd be happy to share that information. Actually, last Friday, we received a confirmation that one of our student athletes at Centerville High School, did have COVID-19, so we had confirmation that that occurred. In this particular situation, this young man was part of the freshman football team. This team was separate from all other athletic groups. They were actually practicing in the evening. So there was very little, if anybody else around in the high school facility at that time. So once we had the confirmation, and we appreciated hearing that from his family, it was very helpful. On Friday, it was early afternoon on Friday, our athletic director, Rob Dement, was able to reach out to all the families, to the other 25 young men that were part of the training that the student was a part of. And we were able to share the information with all of the parents of those other 25 student athletes. This provided an opportunity for parents then to make some decisions, making sure that they did everything that they needed to do to provide safety for their sons moving forward. I also, talked to public health and shared the information with them. They were very complimentary of how we acted and reacted to the situation, and indicated that they too would be reaching out to the family and work through the tracing protocols. I would like to acknowledge and compliment the high school staff, and that they have a station where health screening is taking place prior to any athletes entering the facility. There's many sanitizing stations throughout the workout areas. Social distancing is being practiced. And so all of those things were in place. We were able to track very easily and very quickly exactly which students may have been involved in the workouts with this young man, and we're able to contact all those parents very quickly. Today, though, the situation did change a little bit, and that the requirements kind of were stepped up another level, providing an opportunity for contact. Prior to today, the rules and regulations that athletes needed to comply with was social distancing, and it was referred to as skills training. So it was kind of a preconditioning. There was some resistance training going on in the weight room, as well as running and other exercises as kind of preconditioning activities. Today, for example, if you were to use basketball as an example, for the first time in many months, it was allowable for, say, a scrimmage just with our athletes, of kind of a 5-on-5 scrimmage that students could participate in that kind of an activity. So that level did change today per the governor's guidelines and the guidelines by public health. So
social distancing was no longer required. They could, like in basketball, they could guard and defend and those type of things without social distancing.
Correct. When they were participating in those kinds of activities, they were allowed to play that basketball game similar to the way it's been played in the past without the social distancing. Any times that they were not involved in that activity, they were still encouraged to social distance as well. But definitely same thing, those kinds of drills and activities, basketball, football, those kinds of things were allowable starting today. So,
any comments from anybody?
Yeah, I would like to make some comments. I know Tom was expecting this, but in my office, I've had a lot of parents call over the last couple of days, knowing this and being in the public and the knowledge about the student being positive for COVID. Had a lot of the students that were involved with that actually being tested. So my concern, which is what I'd like to raise tonight as an issue, right now the state allows, as Dr. Henderson said, contact sports to occur. I want you to know the caveat of that is that it is also left, the decision is left up to the individual and local school districts to have that happen. My concern is with us being the first ones out there to have a COVID positive student. I know he was isolated, he was separated. They've done a great job in terms of doing this. Dr. Henson contacted me Friday. We talked about this a little bit. But the reality is this is going to happen again. It just is. I talked to a couple other people today. Not everyone in this area is going to full contact in terms of the athletics right now. Oakwood is not doing full contact. They're waiting until July. Springboro is waiting until July to have contact. Oakwood, they're not even allowed to touch footballs right now. My concern is that this is going to probably get worse before it gets better. The numbers in Ohio, it was just announced earlier that they're going up again. We're now in one of those red states in terms of those states in the country that are going up in COVID testing. My recommendation, I know it's not going to be liked amongst most people, especially the athletic people, but I would really like to see our district hold off on contact sports for another couple of weeks till we see the trend and where it's going. I don't want to be the district that all of a sudden we have a nice little epicenter of outbreaks here because we're doing contact before some and a lot of students. It's not a good thing. You know, I hear people talk about how, you know, younger people are good, they're healthy, they're not dying. Well, I certainly don't want to be the first one that gets something and there's a serious consequence to that action. So I think safety sort of trumps everything else right now. And if we have the ability to wait another couple of weeks, like a lot of the districts around us are doing, I think that would be a good idea. So again, I'm throwing this out there and I'm hoping we'll sort of have a serious discussion about this. Safety trumps everything else right now. And if we can wait another 2 weeks to know what the numbers are, where we're going, calm things down. Again, all the students that were in contact with this student who was positive need to be isolated for 2 weeks, so they're going to be out. We need to have a nice plan. And again, I would just urge you to think about holding back on contact for another couple of weeks.
I'll start off, Dave. Do we have, and I haven't looked at the data from the state of Ohio yet, but they've established a guideline through everyone through the state, allowing the districts to make apparently their own decision. Do we have any data to what they're going on throughout the state of Ohio as opposed to a couple of districts in this area?
Data in what respect, Tom? Which ones are doing it or not doing it, or
Which ones have announced that they're going to go ahead? Which ones announced they're going to go ahead and which ones are not?
I don't think, again, today was the first day it was allowable, so I'm not sure there's any specific data of how many of the 600 plus districts are doing it or not doing it. But again, you know, my concern is our district.
I understand. Well,
Right,
you'd mentioned some, and I didn't know if some other districts had already announced in advance before today that they were not, and how many of those are around in our area.
Yeah, the only ones I know of that I've contacted are Oakwood and Springwood. I know they've delayed. You know, we at our office in the past week and a half have had 4 positive COVID patients in the pediatric population, 20 and under. Our youngest being 5 years of age. And this was not an asymptomatic, this was a symptomatic child. So it's around, it's going to be in higher numbers. I just want to be prepared. And the best way to prepare is to be the safest route that we can take.
Dr. Henderson, I know you mentioned basketball, and I realize we're not just specifically talking about football here, but can you give us an example of what contact looks like at this point in football? Because I mean, I think contact and I think hitting, and I know they're not allowed to hit yet, so I don't know practically what we're talking about.
It's kind of walking through some of the drills, but it is, I think the best way I would describe it is that instead of staying, you know, the 6 feet apart, they are much closer now. And so if they're walking through drills, if they're doing blocking techniques, and, you know, they're actually contacting each other, maybe not hitting, but, you know, maybe you know, with their hands up. You know, maybe probably a better example might be, you know, the girls right now are playing volleyball. And so prior to today, they were staying 6 feet apart, and they were bumping the volleyball, but from a distance from each other. You know,
It's still a shared, I'm sorry, still a shared volleyball that they're all touching and whatnot. Okay.
It was, but then they would go and sanitize, and then that ball would be put away and sanitized, and then another group. So they had groups that were isolated that would use, say, for example, the one volleyball, But today, they actually brought the nets out, and even though they're still on either side of the net, they were closer and they were actually mimicking what I would call mimicking like a scrimmage or like a real volleyball game, so to speak. That may help you understand a little bit about how that contact differed. So again, in the past, it would have been this isolated group of, in this case, girls that were participating in volleyball, and they would just use the one ball. That ball would not be interchanged with another group of girls or anything like that, and they would be keeping that distance. And typically, every sport had like footballs, basketballs, volleyballs, and they would divide those up into whatever made sense. So it divided up into groups of thirds, and they would keep 1/3 that they would use this day. Then the other balls would be sanitized after every activity was finished before they would be used by somebody else. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, so it sounds like it's more of a almost like a lax on the social distancing rather than what I would consider true contact in the sport.
Well, no,
although
Allison,
some of that as well.
I think if you look at basketball, they're guarding each other, and
Yeah.
there is, that kind of thing. And again, you're not allowed to hit yet, but there are things that are around, like open gym, even open mat, for like wrestling and stuff, and that obviously is contact there, definitely
Okay.
contact with.
And again, contact, it doesn't have to be hitting in terms of tackling. It's contact of blocking. They're touching each other. They're right next to each other. They're in each other's face. I mean, so it's not tackling, but it's blocking. And so there is direct contact.
Okay.
Tom, do they wear masks at practice and things like that or not?
Not when they're in the physical activity. So if like last week and the weeks prior, when they were doing resistance training and they were in the weight room, they were assigned to a group. And so again, there'd be 3 or 4 athletes together at one lifting station that would help, spot and make sure that the whoever was doing the exercise was safe. But they were not wearing masks at that time or running or anything like that. So they didn't have them on at that particular time when they were
Thank
doing the
Again,
activity.
let's remember that the positive ones that we know, there are probably others we may not know. It's not just the other student athletes. It's going home to their families, to their grandparents, to the ones that may be at risk. So there is spread of this, both right before and after. So it's not just the students that are involved with this.
Other comments? Well, Dr. Henderson, I think Dr. Aurora has suggested you take a look at that. Would you consider that with the coaches and then get back with the board?
Absolutely,
Oh.
That
definitely.
okay with everybody?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Ms. Sauber?
Yes, good evening. Just a couple of quick updates. Everything that we had talked about back at the May board meeting with regards to our financial projections really is the same, except the funding with House Bill 164, which Megan mentioned during her report and Dr. Henderson mentioned as well during his. So House Bill 164 is giving some relief to the hardest hit districts. The calculation, I'm not going to get into the specific numbers, but the calculation is taking a look at what our reduction was at the beginning, which was that $2.1 million. And they're subtracting off of that the CARES funding that we're getting. And then they take a look at that as a percentage of your total state funding, and we're not going to allow any district to lose over 6% based on that calculation. So because of that 2.1 million reduction, they are not going to take away 741,000 of that. So that does leave our net reduction from the state for the current fiscal year 20 at $1,378,000. So, to me, it's still a significant portion of our funding when you're looking at just a little bit of time left in the fiscal year, because remember, this is a cut to our funding that is happening prior to June 30th, which is next week. We still don't have guidance on what our funding will be for 21. So we're waiting. Hopefully, maybe mid-July, we might know a little bit more, but I don't look for that to be out there anytime real soon. But all of those risks that we talked about over the last month, basically since May, they're all still at play. Our property tax collections, we don't know where those are going to be. Our state funding, what's it going to be for next year? And I believe they're going to cut more potentially. And then what are our costs going to look like? Not knowing yet what our learning is going to look like next year as that plan is being developed. What costs might we experience from that? And then also all the things that we need to purchase in terms of the PPE, sanitation, cleaning, masks, that type of stuff. So still a lot of unknowns. So good that we got that revenue back from the state, but the financial picture overall has not really changed. There are two items, John or Mr. Dahl, I'll just mention those now if that's okay with you, letters C
Sure.
and D. And I can talk more about them when the motions are made, but those are items that we need to do. Letter C is to basically close out fiscal year 20. This is a compliance requirement that we approve our appropriations at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. So we did initial appropriations back probably last June, and then we're doing our final appropriations for fiscal year 20 here. And this is all of our funds. This isn't just the general fund. This is all of the funds that we spend. So it's student activities, it's grants, it's food service, it's our permanent improvement fund. It's every fund and source of revenue and expense that we have. And so that's item C. And then item D is just setting a temporary appropriation. And an appropriation is basically our spending authority from the Board of Education. But it's setting a temporary appropriation for fiscal year 21. And then you'll get a permanent appropriation number in September is when that's due. These items are filed with the county auditor's office. And again, they're a compliance item that we have to do to be compliant with audit.
And the item D, the 43 million, is just a partial of our expenditures is being approved at this point in time.
We did send a revised agenda, Mr. Dahl, and that number is 136 million. But yes, that is the number. So it should be
for D or for C?
For
136.
For D.
C.
No.
C. I was talking about the one that D, that's a partial.
Right. That number should be 136,633,926.
136 million for D.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
I know in the past on that temporary appropriation, we always did a 3-month appropriation there. Is this something different that the Shared Resource Center does for the entire year as opposed to the way we have always done it in the past, Laura?
So it's not a Shared Resource Center thing, really. It's treasurer specific. I usually try to get up a little higher, closer to what I think we're going to be in terms of actual. I look at our grants and I get our initial allocations. So those are actual numbers to start the year. We'll have carryovers that will come into that. And so those numbers will change. But the other things I try to set a little bit higher to where it's going to be a little bit closer to our actual. And then we'll fine tune those numbers as we move through the summer and get our staffing set for the year. And our total budget set, we'll fine tune that number.
Okay, it's just something different than we've seen over the years is all.
It is. It's higher than you've seen, but I kept it on the low side. It's still low compared to what the actual appropriation will be.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, the House Bill 164 monies, those are not restricted. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's just part of our unrestricted state foundation money. And it's not additional revenue that we're getting. It's just
right.
they're not reducing our funding by as much. They're not reducing by 2.1 million. They're going to reduce by 1,378,000.
Okay, but that is the major difference between that and the CARES funding. The CARES funding is restricted funds.
It's restricted funds. The restrictions are not real strict, but there are restrictions. And as Dr. Henderson mentioned, the technology was definitely one of the things that they spelled out. And it's to address expenses related to the COVID pandemic.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Laura, that money can't be used for salaries for
Thank you.
staff.
It
Correct.
what?
That money cannot be used to pay salaries or benefits for our staff, correct?
It could be, yes, it could be if we chose to spend it that way. But the difference between the CARES funding and any other source of our funding is it's one-time funding. This is coming one time. It's a one-time allocation that we won't see again unless the federal government decides to issue another stimulus package.
So if you were to say that if we were going to use it for staffing, we were getting $700-something thousand back, plus this $471,000 back. Is that correct? We're not getting reduced. I mean, out of that 2.1 million that we got taken away, we're getting $700-something thousand not taken out. And then we're also getting $471,000 or so from.
It's 480. Yeah.
So that's, again, that's $1.2 million versus $2.1 million. Okay.
That's correct. It doesn't change the overall trend of our financial picture.
Correct.
And it doesn't address our the not knowing part to what our funding is going to look like next year as well.
And optimistically, it's not going to look very good. It would be surprising if more money wasn't cut come July, August from the state budget with the severe deficits they have, despite the millions and millions of dollars that they have in the rainy day fund. They're still going to probably cut.
Yeah.
Some of the numbers that I've heard is that so the state cut $770 million from their budget in the current fiscal year. That's at the state level. I've heard numbers thrown out of a deficit of $2.5 billion in fiscal year 21. So that's 4 times the amount that they cut for fiscal year 20. And who knows where they're going to cut that from. I'm sure there's a portion of that is going to come from education. It's just how much.
Or do you know how much they have in the rainy day fund roughly?
Oh, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
It's over $1 billion.
I thought it was 2.5 billion, but
Billion. I
It's
just
over
wanted
two.
billion dollars.
That's what I
Yeah,
remember.
billion.
2.5 billion is what I
Yes.
remember hearing. So yeah.
Yes.
Which is money they could have used instead of taking away 2.1 million from us. They could have
Correct.
used, and our governor chose not to do that, which has led us to the point where we are now in terms of making cuts. I say that because I just want to encourage people to please contact your representative, contact your governor, and let them know how you feel, because we wouldn't probably in this situation in terms of having to reduce force had it not been for those decisions.
And Laura, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly, because the CARES funding and the now House Bill 164 funding are both one-time changes in our reduction and one-time payments from the federal government. Neither of those dollar amounts are reflected in your 5-year forecast for next year's revenue. Next year's state revenue reflects the full 2.1 million reduction. Is that correct?
It does.
Okay.
We were required to do that filing for May. There really is no reason today to do another 5-year forecast in June. We'll do that in November, but that's correct.
Okay.
Which I think is going to be a more accurate picture for next year.
Right.
So
And it could still be conservative
It could
because like we've said, okay,
It could be.
thank you.
Laura, could I ask one more question, please? Did I hear you say that CARES and ESSER funds could be used for personnel?
That's correct. Yes. I don't know all those specific guidelines. There were many items. You could use it to purchase PPE. You could use it for technology. I don't know if Sheree wants to click on, because there were several other areas. I think some schools were doing summer school programs. There are other items, but yes, it could have been used for salaries and benefits. But again,
Thank you.
Mhm.
But I think, Jeff, she was going to say it's a one-time number, so you might be able to use it for this year, not the cuts, but it wouldn't be available in the next year. The same money wouldn't be available.
Right.
I
Right. The restrictions were designed around any kind of challenges or expenses that had been incurred by COVID-19. So depending on that, you could use it for a variety of different things based on the district's plan to react to the COVID-19 situation. So.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the treasurer's recommendations. Need a motion to consider approving the May 2020 financial statement consisting of the monthly financial report, fund activity report, appropriations, general funding spending report, general fund summary comparison, purchase orders included in the statement number 7 approved by administration then and now, certified by the treasurer and supported by a board resolution totaling $45,542.54. Need a motion?
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernball,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
yes,
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is consider approving the minutes of the following Board of Education meetings: May 26, 2020 regular meeting, June 15, 2020 special meeting. Need a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernball,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
yes,
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. On C, Laura, did that number change?
It did. The revised agenda went out this afternoon. It's $153,084,827
Thank you.
for
Need a
fiscal year
motion to consider approving FY 2019 final amended appropriations and certificate of estimated resources in the amount of $153,084,827.
So
It's
moved.
fiscal year, hold on,
20.
it's fiscal year 2020.
fiscal year 20.
Oh,
So
C
moved.
says FY 2019. That's
Yes,
20 also?
that was the change that went out. Yes,
Okay, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Second.
FY 20.
Someone get John new minutes.
Thank you. Did you get the motion in a second, Laura?
I-
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernball,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
yes,
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. D is a different number as well, 136.
633, 926.
It's FY 21.
Yes.
Correct.
Need a motion considering approving FY 2021 temporary appropriations in an amount of $136,633,926.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernball,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
yes,
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Superintendent recommendations, we can take A, B, C, D, D1, E, and G together. Is that correct, Dr. Henderson?
That's
We have to
correct, yes.
exclude C, we have to exclude C1.
Just take C1 separately, please.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent recommends accepting resignations listed on Schedule A. Superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, the change of contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B for the salaries programs on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C for the salary programs on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment of personnel listed on Schedules D and D1 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments. Superintendent recommends the granting of leaves of absence for the personnel listed on Schedule E for the reasons on the dates given. The superintendent recommends the reemployment of non-renewed personnel listed on Schedule G for the reasons and on the dates given.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernball,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
yes,
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Schedule C1, the superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C1 for the salaries and programs and on the effective dates given. The motion,
So
please.
moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernball,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
yes,
Megan Sparks,
Abstain.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Next item on the agenda, Centerville School District Board of Education resolution implementing reduction in force in teaching staff. Very long resolution. Board of Education, Centerville School District, Montgomery County, Ohio, met on June 22nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. with the following members present. It's all of us. Whereas after consideration of all alternatives and despite the resignations and retirement of teachers who taught within the district during the prior school year, the board determines it necessary to reduce the number of teaching positions in the district for financial reasons. And whereas the superintendent recommends that 18.5 full-time equivalent teaching positions be reduced as follows: 2 in the teaching field of grades pre-K through 5, regular education; 2 in the teaching field of grades 4 through 9, regular education; 2 in the teaching field of grades K through 12, Spanish; 1 in the teaching field of grades K through 12, French; 1 in the teaching field of grades 7 through 12, science; 1 in the teaching grades 7 through 12, math; 1 in the teaching field of grades pre-K through 3rd grade, special education intervention specialist; 8 in the teaching field of grades K through 12, special education intervention specialist; and 1/2 in the teaching field of music education. And whereas, given the preference to those teachers having continuing contract status, basing such decisions on teaching performance measures in accordance with Article 20, Section 20.01 of the agreement between the Board of Education and the Centerville Classroom Teachers Association, Board Policy 3131, Ohio Revised Code Section 3319.17, the following teachers have been identified as those employees affected by the reduction: Dalita Aboud, Marissa Boris, Melissa Calhoun, Jerry Ewing, Cassidy Gustin, Susan Hott, Kelly Hayes, Jean Karpinski, Amanda McCormick, Lisa McGinnis, Olivia Panic, Carolyn Slocum, Becca Swan, Madison Teeters, Anna Trimble, Gabrielle Volk, Kevin Walsh, Elise Weichel, and William Wilson. Therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Centerville City School Board that 18.5 full-time equivalent teaching positions be reduced for financial reasons as follows: 2 in the teaching field of grades pre-K through 5, regular education; 2 in the teaching field of grades 4 through 9, regular education; 2 in the teaching field of grades K through 12, Spanish; 1 in the teaching field of grades K through 12, French; 1 in the teaching field of grades 7 through 12, science; 1 in the teaching field of grades through 12, math; 1 in the teaching field of grades pre-K through 3, special education intervention specialist; 8 in the teaching field of grades K through 12, special education intervention specialist; and 1/2 in the teaching field of grades K through 12, music education. And be it further resolved that in accordance with the recommendation of the superintendent, while giving preference to those teachers having continuing contract status and basing such decisions on the teacher performance measures, and in accordance with Article 20 and Section 20.01 of the agreement between the Board of Education and the Centerville Classroom Teachers Association, Board Policy 3131, and the Ohio Revised Code Section 3319.17, the contracts of employment with the following teachers are hereby suspended, effective at the close of business on July 31, 2020. Dalita Aboud, Marissa Boris, Marissa Calhoun, Jerry Ewing, Cassidy Justin, Susan Hott, Kelly Hayes, Jean Karpinski, Amanda McCormick, Lisa McGinnis, Olivia Panic, Carolyn Slocum, Becca Swan, Madison Teeters, Anna Trimble, Gabrielle Volk, Kevin Walsh, Elise Weichel, and William Wilson. Be it further resolved that the treasurer is authorized and directed to provide each of the teachers listed above written notice of the suspension of their teaching contracts, along with a copy of this resolution by certified U.S. mail and electronic mail. Need a motion and a second, please.
Before we move and adopt, I'd like to just say that I will support this because I know that you guys have done some good due diligence working this out and trying to do what's best for the district. My only caveat is over the next few weeks, knowing we're getting back 700,000+ from the state, or getting it back, or not spending as much. The fact that we're probably going to have more teachers that are going to turn in resignations, the fact that we may have teachers that don't come back because of their COVID concerns, that over these next few weeks, we do everything we can to bring back these positions, especially the special ed positions that I do agree are much needed in this district. So I will support this and make the motion with the understanding that we'll work as hard as we can. And I know you will. I don't need to say it, but I know you will, to bring them back. But I want the public to know we will do our best, if money is there and the positions are there, to bring these teachers back. So I'll make the motion.
Dr. Henderson, the language in here where it says that the contracts are suspended, that indicates that they are going on a callback list if we are able to bring those positions back, like Dr. Rohrer stated.
That's correct. They all have recall rights for 3 years, so that's correct.
Okay.
Need a second, please?
I'll
Second.
Call the roll?
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Very, very reluctantly, yes.
Megan Sparks,
No.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is to consider entering into an agreement with the governing board, the shared resource service to employ Laura Sauber as treasurer of the Centerville City School District for a period commencing August 1, 2020 and ending July 31, 2022. This item was previously discussed at least twice in our last couple of board meetings. Need a motion,
So moved.
please?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll?
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is consider a resolution approving the following revised board policies. Number 1520, employment of administrators. Number 3120, employment of professional staff. Number 3120.04, employment of substitutes. Number 3120.05, employment of personnel in summer school. Number 3120.08, employment of personnel for co-curricular, extracurricular activities. 4120, employment of classified staff. Number 4120.08, employment of personnel for co-curricular, extracurricular activities. Number 4124, employment contract. Number 5460, graduation requirements. And number 5460.02, students at risk of not qualifying for a high school diploma, also previously discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is consider approving the purchase of 1,500 Chromebooks from CDWG for $407,600 using federal CARES ESSER funds, previously discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Are we going to have any discussion on this, John?
Sure, go ahead. It's time to discuss before they take a vote.
Okay. The 407,000, I know, Laura, either you or Tom mentioned it earlier. This is in line with what we would normally be spending, and the item that we tabled last month, I believe, or maybe in April, because of budget concerns, but this purchase is in line with our annual amount of Chromebooks that we would normally be purchasing. Is that correct?
it is.
Okay. And it's, this will put us at a 1-to-1 ratio. So we are removing those touch points, and we can make a quicker and easier transition if and when we need to return to remote learning throughout the school year.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Did you get both the first and the second?
I did.
I thought so. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
No.
Megan Sparks,
No.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Next item on the agenda, as we discussed earlier, we got a motion to, or need a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1. Need a motion to the board to approve, to adjourn to executive session for the purpose considering the employment of an employee of the school district. No other business will be conducted except to come out of executive session and to adjourn. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll?
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes, we are in executive session and assuming Shannon will get us all there in a little bit.
Thank you for all those that were watching tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.